So it's good to see all of you. I see a bunch of new faces, and that's great. I mean, you picked a good series to come. These sermons are going to be a little different than most of our sermons have been. They're going to feel a little less Bible heavy, and I'm probably going to be pushing less for conversion to Christianity in these sermons. That's not my agenda with these sermons, these particular sermons. I have a different agenda with these particular sermons. And so whether you're a hardcore Christian or you're someone who's on the fence of faith, or you consider yourself an agnostic or an atheist, I'm so glad that you're here to talk with us about dating, because dating is a universal problem for us. No matter where we are on the spiritual spectrum, you are either struggling in the dating scene or you know and love someone who is. And so we're going to spend 5 weeks talking about dating. You have your study guides, I hope. Those are helpful to you. If you're in small groups or classes, you can use those to further the conversation. Some of those questions are carefully thought through and kind of extend what we talk about in the services, in the sermons about this topic. So I want to talk a little bit about just initially what I've heard about dating from people in this congregation and people in my family, people I love and care about so much. And what I keep hearing is simply that dating these days is hard. I mean, if I summed up everything that I'm hearing from people in the dating scene, it's that dating is a very hard thing. Now, there were other words people used to describe dating, but hard is kind of the all-encompassing one. It's just a hard thing to know what to do. And I think that's because, now, there's a lot of different reasons, but so the internet is, and apps and everything, modern technology, doesn't always help. I know there are couples here, when I have criticized Tinder or Match.com in the run up to this service, like there's like 1 or 2 couples that met on Tinder and got married, or they met on Match.com and got married, and they're like fierce in their defense of Match.com and Tinder. And Snapchat, it's another one that some people meet people on. And I don't know everything about those things, but I know a lot of people struggle in the dating scene. And my hunch is this. My hunch is that we are still figuring dating out, because dating is new. Dating as a human practice is still in its infancy. We still don't know what the heck we're supposed to be doing on the dating scene, because it's really new to the human experience. You don't come pre-wired knowing how to date. Like you came because of genetics and all this stuff. You came pre-wired knowing how to eat. You came pre-wired knowing kind of what sports are like. You came pre-wired knowing, most of us, how to parent. None of us came pre-wired to date, because there's no like generational precedent for it. The human race has walked the earth for something like 30,000 years, and we've been doing what we call dating today for about 100 years. So if you were to, let me say it this way, if the whole of human experience could be boiled down to 1 year, the dating experiment begins December 31st. So we are, I think, as a people, just starting to figure out what dating is, how it should work, and who we should look for. And there's just, it's kind of like, I liken it to like when humans didn't invent fire, but when humans started to learn how to harness fire. I got to think that in the first couple of generations of people that figured out fire, there were some accidents along the way, like there was some pain. Several sets of eyebrows were lost in the first couple of generations of fire, and domesticating fire. And sometimes dating feels the same way. It's like we're doing it so clumsily, and so much sort of selfish stuff gets in the way of dating sometimes that people get hurt along the way. And I think a good place to begin is just being honest about the fact that dating is hard, dating is new, and the church typically hasn't helped much with dating. Now, if you went to a church, if you grew up in a church that just gave you all sorts of practical, pragmatic advice about how to date and who to date and what questions to ask a potential partner and how to know if the person you're sitting across from could really have the potential to be a partner for life. If you went to one of those churches that gave you that kind of thorough advice, about dating, please just see me after the service, because I have never been to that church. Most of us grew up in a church where the whole of practical advice about dating could be summed up in one sentence: don't have sex before marriage. Because people who do that, they don't go to heaven. Like that was about all I gathered from my church about the practice of dating, because the church hasn't been equipped to deal with dating. Now, I hope that's changing, and I hope we can start a different conversation today, but to this point, the church has done a pretty terrible job. Now, for 30,000 years before, I think religious communities played a larger role in arranging marriages. Like before dating started 100 years ago, most of your marriages would have been arranged for you before you could even speak. Or if you were a woman, you would have been kind of sold and acquired, passed from your father to your future husband. So I'm glad dating is here. Like, dating is an improvement over that stuff. I'm not anti-dating at all. I think this is a good development, but we've got to figure out, as Christians, how to harness the power of dating and make sure we're doing it right. So I think the church can help in that regard. The church has not been super helpful based on what I'm hearing from single people. I'm getting a lot of painful emails and stuff from single people who say being a single Christian is like torture sometimes. Walking into a church where most of the people there are married, and people's first question is always, so who are you seeing? How is it going? Are you still seeing that guy? Oh, you're not. Like it is like a one-dimensional experience for single people at the church, because you're viewed as being incomplete somehow. Especially, it gets even worse when we get into our 20s, into our 30s, we're not married. It gets worse and worse for single people in the church. I will never forget the church I pastored in Louisiana for a year. One of these lovely couples there wanted to start a Sunday school class that both singles and married people would go to, and they had the right idea, because it was either you had your couples classes or you had the singles group. And so they wanted to start a group for everyone, and they started it, but only married people came. And they couldn't figure out why only married people were coming, and so they came and they asked me, Pastor, how can we get single people to come to this class? And I was like, okay, well, what's the class called? I can help you promote it. And they go, well, we're calling it Pairs and Spares. And I said, I think I've pinpointed the problem. And it's kind of silly, but it also, I think, says a lot about how the church, in a subconscious way, I don't think it's hateful, but we look at single people as spare parts until they find their match or whatever. And so I think we can do better, church. I think we can start a different conversation. And so what I'd like you to do as we get started is just voice your support with me. If you have your Bible with you, put your left hand on your Bible. If you don't have a Bible with you, put your left hand on your phone, because maybe you have a Bible app on your phone. Or maybe you hold your phone in higher esteem than a Bible. And put your left hand there, put your right hand in the air for me, okay? Repeat after me these words. When I see a single friend at church, I will never, ever start a conversation by asking if they're seeing anyone yet. I will never, ever pity someone for being single. And if my friend is still single, I will never, ever tilt my head to the side like a pathetic puppy. And I will value my single friends as whole human beings. Children of the living God. All right, thank you. About half of you took that seriously, so thank you to the half of you. Single people, I want to find a way to affirm you where you are, and to also speak truth into where you hope to go relationally over the next 5 weeks. I hope to start a new conversation. Beyond Christian Mingle Part 1 starts today. And as I've said earlier, people have thought I'm crazy for spending 5 weeks talking about dating, but there's so much to say. But I think as we're getting started, I've perceived people asking themselves two questions, and I bet you're asking yourself these questions right now. First, The first question that I think many of you are asking is, why would we spend 5 weeks talking about dating when at least half or more than half, definitely more than half of the people in the room today are married already? The married folks in our congregation are a majority. Now, it's not a huge majority here at the Story, but it's a majority. So you're asking, why spend so much time talking to less than half of the congregation? Or you're asking, what useful information or advice could a preacher in his 30s who got married as a 20-year-old virgin possibly have on dating? And that question hurts, you guys. I wish, you gave me some credit here, but no, I'll start with the first question. The first question is simply that there are many single people in our midst, and I want to acknowledge that journey. And if you're not a single person, I bet the conversations that we have, if you're married, I bet they will strengthen your marriage. And I bet you know and love someone who is single, who you wish was here right now, and by the time we're done with this series, you wish that they would have heard the things we talk about. And you can take it to them. You can be the missionary in that way, if you're gracious with it and respectful about it. Many of you are parents of children who are in the dating age range. I hope you can take some of this to them as well. Because while I didn't really have a lot of experience on the dating scene as someone who got married at 20, Gio and I have talked to a ton of people who are struggling on the dating scene. And we've also talked to a lot of people who are married now who are having issues in their marriage that go back to the time when they were dating. So the issue, the seed of the issue that took root and grew in their marriage began at a time when they were dating. We talk to people every single week who wish that someone had told them when they were single the things we're going to be talking about during this series. I promise you that this could save you a lot of pain and heartache, because while I don't have a lot of personal experience with dating, I have a lot of experience with people who've struggled with dating. And it kind of hurts, it hurts to see people that you love want nothing more than to find the one and get married and settle down and have a family and all this stuff, but they can't quite seem to find that. So I know some of you are skeptical about hearing a preacher talk about dating. I'm just asking for your grace and your open mind as we get started. I will say that I'm not really hoping to convert people to Christianity with this series, but I do have an agenda. My agenda is not sort of this bait and switch thing. We're not going to get to the end of this conversation, and I'm going to say something like, to pull the rug out from under the dating thing completely. I'm going to be like, so when did you last go on a date with Jesus? That's not what this is. I don't have that agenda this time, but I do have an agenda, and here is my agenda. With this series, I will be passionately, vehemently pro-marriage. And so you'll hear me talking a lot about dating that leads to marriage, because I think marriage is the best possible outcome for 95% of us in the room. Now, you might say, well, I heard that sermon you preached one time where you said the Bible talks about singleness as the best way to live your life. And yes, Paul does say in 1 Corinthians 7 that if you can be single, if you can live as a single person for your whole life, then by all means be single, and that's great. But the kind of singleness Paul's talking about is the kind of singleness that comes along with solitude and celibacy. And my impression of most of us is that we're not signing up for that. That's not the kind of singleness that we're interested in. Lifelong celibacy is not really our thing. So can I get an amen on that? Okay, good. So I think that if that's the case, then for 95% of us, marriage is the best possible outcome. And the way people get married these days is by way of dating. But I just believe that marriage will lead, a good marriage, it's important that you hear that, a good marriage will lead you to a happier life, a more fulfilling life, a stronger community, stronger church, better society, and a more solid foundation for future generations of children. So there's a lot that I have invested in the marriage argument, which is kind of why it hurts me a little bit when I hear young people these days, young adults, I hear all the statistics about how they're giving up on marriage. Have you heard these statistics? It's everywhere in every news outlet that marriage itself as an institution is in crisis. This concerns me. I'm not sure what the future holds when a generation of people have either completely given up on marriage or they're delaying it. They say, I don't want to get married till I'm 35 or 40. I'm not sure what that means for society, but the reasons that I hear them giving up on marriage for, I kind of get it, But I want to talk through it a little bit, young adults, because what I'm hearing is that you're giving in to the social norm that marriage is inherently negative for you. Like marriage means for you, you've got to give up some personal freedom. We call it the old ball and chain. We say it's settling down. We have all these negative words for marriage. You will never see a story on CNN.com about a really good marriage where two people just respect each other and they play tennis together, and you will never see it because it's kind of boring for a news story. It's not newsworthy, but they do show you the messed up stuff about marriage. I also hear people say, well, 50% of marriages end in divorce anyway, so what's the point? Have you heard anyone say this? I hear it all the time. I used to think that was true because so many people said it, I assumed it must be true. 50% or more of marriages end in divorce, so what's the point? Except for the fact that that statistic is based on nothing at all. It's a lie. The divorce rate in America has never been close to 50%. Nobody really knows where that came from. Somebody said it once, and then somebody else said it, and then everybody was saying it. It's not based on facts at all. The divorce rate in America peaked somewhere around 1989, 1990, at about 37, 38%, and it is settled in now at about 33%, which isn't great, granted, but it's not more than half, like you often hear. We've built this stigma around marriage as though it is inherently negative. I want to present marriage as something that is life-giving and wonderful, that works for two people who get it. And so that's my agenda. I will be fiercely pro-marriage through this series. I think good marriages equal better, happier lives. And I love you guys, and I want you to be happy. So I want as many of you as possible to get married as soon as possible. Even if it's like by the end of the series. Look around the room. Just see if there's someone that you could tolerate for the rest of your life, and talk to me about it. And the fifth part of this series, we got dads covering their daughters' eyes. We can make this work. One thing Gio and I like to do in our free time, this is really dorky, but one thing we like to do when we're bored is we'll just lay in the bed and think, who in our congregation would be great together? Who could we match? And we play ministry matchmaker. She's really good at it. She's actually connected people in our churches in the past that have gone on and gotten married and stuff. But I think I'm kind of being silly with that. We're silly when we do it, but at the same time, I wish there was more we could do to help people meet each other. There was a time in the past when the religious community played matchmaker, not just Christian, but globally. There was a time when if people struggled if they weren't, arranged, their marriage wasn't arranged, or there wasn't an acquisition thing with the father selling his daughter, they would go to the religious community and be connected that way. So we've thought about, instituting that at the Story. Maybe it's our next ministry matchmaking at the Story Houston. But whoever we set you up with, you're stuck with. You have to stick it out. You have to trust us on this. I don't think we'll do that. But I just say that to say nothing breaks our hearts as pastors quite like someone who's really, really aching to find a partner, who just hates living alone, who's wrapped up in fear about growing old alone, someone who would make a great spouse, someone who loves the Lord, someone who has their priorities in order, and they just can't seem to find someone who's a suitable match, who's a suitable partner. That really breaks our hearts as pastors. And so I'm going to spend the rest of our time today talking to that person, to those who are single of any stripe in our midst today. I want to tell you there is an advantage to being single that no one will ever tell you until now. You have an advantage over the rest of us, and the advantage that you have is that you get to do this the right way. As a single person, you get to learn from the mistakes that all the rest of us made. And I promise you there are married people sitting around you right now, single folks, who wish somebody would have told them the things that I'm going to tell you through this series, before they got married. You get to do it right. You get to prepare yourself in such a way to live a healthier life, whether that's on your own or whether that's in seeking a partner and in marriage maybe eventually. So I'm just going to offer little tidbits of common sense. I'm finding that when it comes to dating, common sense just isn't very common anymore, and the dating scene is so chaotic. The words I hear about dating from single people is that it's just scary, it's filthy, it's sex obsessed, it's threatening, it's chaotic, it's shallow. I just hear all these negative words, and I think we need to kind of hit the reset button and talk a little bit about common sense. And the piece of common sense that I have for you today is very simple. It's going to save you a lot of pain, a lot of time, and a lot of heartache, I believe, if you let it sink in. And I'll start by offering a Bible verse. If you'll take your Bibles and open up to 1 Corinthians. Open up to 1 Corinthians 13. That collective sigh that you just heard in the room was every single person going, oh God, he's not going to pull out 1 Corinthians 13, is he? We hear that at every wedding. I'm not going to give you what you think I'm going to give you from 1 Corinthians 13. Turn to verse 11. We all know 1 Corinthians 13 is the love chapter. Love is patient, love is kind. But we often get bored or don't make it all the way to this verse, and I think this is one of the most important verses in the chapter. Verse 11, where Paul says, when I was a child, I used to speak like a child, reason like a child, think like a child, act like a child. But now that I've become a man, I've put an end to childish things. So why? Right in the middle of the most important biblical chapter on love, why does Paul spend time writing about maturity, about putting away childish things? I would submit to you that you cannot really be in love and immature at the same time. Real love requires maturity. It requires you to grow up and to grow into the person that God created you to be before you even think about meeting a partner. It requires you to become the person God created you to be, to grow up. That is to love. To mature is to love. Now, my opinion, and this is kind of anecdotal, but I've heard enough evidence now to think it's more than just anecdotal. My opinion is that the single greatest roadblock to success in dating is immaturity. We have, collectively speaking, a lot of growing up to do, men and women alike. And this is true for married people, and I hope married people, this sinks in with you as well. Because for love to grow, we have to mature. We have to grow. For love to advance, we have to advance in our own right, without depending on someone else to do that for us. I think the single greatest impediment to success in dating is immaturity. Now, single people, I'm not saying you are immature necessarily, maybe, but not necessarily. I'm saying one of the reasons it's so hard to find an appropriate partner is that there is a problem or a lack of maturity in the dating pool. When it comes to dating, we still haven't put all of our childish things aside, I'm afraid. One of the most common regrets that I hear from people who are a little bit older, who are married, or people who are single and a little bit older, I hear the same kind of regrets, and it's always something like, I wish I had grown up a little sooner. I wish I had matured a little earlier. I wish I had become an adult a little younger. Or I hear people say, I wish my spouse would just grow up, or I wish he had grown up years ago. I've been dealing with his childishness or her childishness. Hear it all the time, some version of that. But here's what I don't hear. I never have heard one person come to me and go, you know, Pastor, I'm so glad I partied through college instead of getting a job, and I'm so glad I racked up all that debt instead of trying to pay some of my expenses off as I went through college. All that student debt has really set me up well for life. And Pastor, I am so thrilled, and my spouse is thrilled that I slept around so much when I was younger, because it's really opened us up to new possibilities in our own intimacy. That is something I have never heard anyone say. And I don't think I ever will. Because the longer we live immature lives, the more we set ourselves up for regret later. The life you're living now, the memories you're making now, they will be a part of your future. Growing up now, no matter how old you are, is very important to dating and to relationships. Both men and women say the same kinds of things about this. I wish I'd opened my eyes a little bit sooner than I did. Now, it's a little bit different for men than it is for women. Typically speaking, I'm going to upset people with my gender generalities. I've got to have some way to talk about this with y'all, so just bear with me. I know that there are women who will fit into the men category that I'm about to say and vice versa, but typically speaking, men and women struggle with immaturity in different ways. For men, the problem is what I call extended adolescence. We have the norm in our culture today that your 20s are basically an extension of your teens. Whereas it used to be that when you were 18, you were a grown man by then. You took care of your own business. You paid your own bills, or you were getting ready to, especially by the time you were in your 20s, you were working on yourself as a man. You were growing, you were maturing, you were becoming a man. But now it's a little bit different. You're 28 is like the new 18 now, and I see a lot, not every 20-something guy is like this, trust me, but a lot of them are. We got a lot of 20-something guys, even 30-something guys that spend 10 hours a week playing Xbox. Another 10 hours a week wasting time watching porn or doing other things that add nothing to their lives. And man, it's time to grow up. We've got to grow up and become the men God created us to be. And it's especially true with dating, because dating is not just about you. Men, when you're of age and you're ready to contribute to society and you're ready to, you're of age to become a man and have a family. It's so hard to find an appropriate partner is that there is a problem or a lack of maturity in the dating pool. When it comes to dating, we still haven't put all of our childish things aside, I'm afraid. One of the most common regrets that I hear from people who are a little bit older, who are married, or people who are single and a little bit older, I hear the same kind of regrets, and it's always something like, I wish I had grown up a little sooner. I wish I had matured a little earlier. I wish I had become an adult a little younger. Or I hear people say, I wish my spouse would just grow up, or I wish he had grown up years ago. I've been dealing with his childishness or her childishness. Hear it all the time, some version of that. But here's what I don't hear. I never have heard one person come to me and go, Pastor, I'm so glad I partied through college instead of getting a job, and so glad I racked up all that debt instead of trying to pay some of my expenses off as I went through college. All that student debt has really set me up well for life. And Pastor, I am so thrilled, and my spouse is thrilled that I slept around so much when I was younger, because it's really opened us up to new possibilities in our own intimacy. That is something I have never heard anyone say. And I don't think I ever will. Because the longer we live immature lives, the more we set ourselves up for regret later. The life you're living now, the memories you're making now, they will be a part of your future. Growing up now, no matter how old you are, is very important to dating and to relationships. Both men and women say the same kinds of things about this. I wish I'd opened my eyes a little bit sooner than I did. Now, it's a little bit different for men than it is for women. Typically speaking, I'm going to upset people with my gender generalities. I've got to have some way to talk about this with y'all, so just bear with me. I know that there are women who will fit into the men category that I'm about to say and vice versa, but typically speaking, men and women struggle with immaturity in different ways. For men, the problem is what I call extended adolescence. We have the norm in our culture today that your 20s are basically an extension of your teens. Whereas it used to be that when you were 18, you were a grown man by then. You took care of your own business. You paid your own bills, or you were getting ready to, especially by the time you were in your 20s, you were working on yourself as a man. You were growing, you were maturing, you were becoming a man. But now it's a little bit different. You're 28 is like the new 18 now, and I see a lot, not every 20-something guy is like this, trust me, but a lot of them are. We got a lot of 20-something guys, even 30-something guys that spend 10 hours a week playing Xbox. Another 10 hours a week wasting time watching porn or doing other things that add nothing to their lives. And man, it's time to grow up. We've got to grow up and become the men God created us to be. And it's especially true with dating, because dating is not just about you. Men, when you're of age and you're ready to contribute to society, and you're ready to, you're of age to become a man and have a family and do these things, guys, it's not just about you, because for every man who spends 10 hours a week playing Xbox, there is a woman out there somewhere who is ready, and she loves Jesus, and she'll make a great wife and an awesome mother, and she works, and she makes her own, she's her own person. But the man she's supposed to meet, even though she's ready, the man she's supposed to marry is, too obsessed with his fantasy draft at Buffalo Wild Wings next month to be ready. This is this kind of thing that's happening all over our society. Guys, it is time to grow up. Be men of honor. Be men of dignity, and who contribute to society and work hard. A lot of men will get upset and they'll be like, oh, who is he to tell me I'm not a man? I'm a man. All right, well, go home and put the Xbox away in the attic. Or if you spend more time and money on sports and entertainment than you do on church and charity, I'm sorry, guys. This is true across the spectrum of age. We have to grow up. Men, it is time to step up. People, society, God is ready for us to step up. Now, it's not just men. Men, I picked on you a little bit, but I would be remiss if I didn't sort of turn the other side of the coin over and talk about immaturity among women that I've perceived in the dating arena. It looks a little bit different, but it is immaturity nonetheless. Men might date like adolescent boys. Some women tend to date like grade school girls. Lots of women these days think dating should be about finding the one. The perfect man who rides in on a white horse and sweeps me off my feet and makes me feel things I've never felt before. And the man is out there somewhere. God made him just for me. He's my soulmate. And when I meet him, life will be different. And he makes me feel goosebumpy and tingly and has butterflies. So you search for that man, and then you search for the perfect man, and then a good man comes into your life. A good man. He's got a job, works hard, he's educated, he loves Jesus, he adores you, and will put you on a pedestal for the rest of your life without any hesitation whatsoever. He accepts all of your flaws, ladies, but because when you look at him, you don't feel the butterflies in your stomach. He can't be the one. There's no way. He's not the one. I don't feel tingly when he looks into my eyes, but he adores you. He's a good man. All right? So you leave the good man, and then you find somebody who makes you feel the butterflies. And he gives you that feeling of the butterflies. But then when dinner's over, he also gives you the check because he has no job. And then who knows what else he gives you, because he slept with half of Houston and he's not called his mom in 7 years. But he's so hot. Hot. H-A-W-T. Hot. The biceps and the hair and the eyes, the smoldering eyes. Ladies, you might be convinced that with you by his side, he will fix all his issues and you can fix him and it's going to be great. Trust me, ladies. Look for the good guys. The flying under the radar, I'll adore you forever guys. One day, you'll have those goosebumps. Trust me. Immaturities, ladies, it's time to grow up. The Bible doesn't say a lot about dating, but the Bible does say a lot about love. And at the pinnacle of the Bible's message about love, we find this message about maturity, about coming into your own as a child of God and not waiting for someone to come along and make you complete. In the love chapter, Paul says, if you really want to know love, grow up. Stop being childish. Love requires maturity. And so guys, I'm urging you, don't give in to the lie that you should extend your adolescence, that what it means to be a man is to just hang out and go to bars and play video games until the right woman comes along to be your mama, until you're ready to grow up. Don't let that be the story that your life tells. Grow up now, guys. Be a man now. And pour all of yourself into developing as a man of God now. If you're single, make it your mission to become a healthy, whole, spiritual, devoted, selfless, mature man before you get out there and start dating and ruining poor girls' lives. Like, become a man first instead of later. Ladies, don't give in to the lie and don't settle for the fairy tale. The fairy tales you were told are false. And they leave you, really, if you think about it, they objectify you, women. They set you up as damsels in distress who need to be rescued. The Word of God says you are much more than that, women. You are created with inherent worth in the image of God. You don't need someone who will come in and sweep you off your feet. Look for the one who will come alongside you and take you by the hand and walk faithfully with you forever. Look for that one. Women, that's what it means to grow up and to mature. To both men and women, I will just say this, and this is the last thing I'm going to say. I've talked for a long time, but there is no one out there who will complete you. Tom Cruise, Renee Zellweger, and that little kid that had an 8-pound head, they lied to you. All right? There's no one out there who will complete you, and you will not complete anyone else. You are no one's missing piece, and no one is yours either. Your role in your singleness is to develop and to become, to nurture your own soul, to pursue the things of God in such a way that you grow into this maturity, into your own sense of wholeness, and not to look for your other half that completes you, but to look for another whole that goes along with you. I've never seen a more profound illustration of what I think dating should be than I did when I read a book to my children. It is by Shel Silverstein, is called The Missing Piece Meets the Big O. It's not a very popular book. Not a lot of people have heard of it. And I thought I should tell the story, but then I came across a video that tells the story for us, and I'd like for you to watch it. It's 4 minutes introducing Shel Silverstein's The Missing Piece Meets the Big O. Let's pray together. God, I'm praying for everyone here today that something that was said or something that was heard makes a difference and leads to some positive change. But I'm especially praying for those who are single in our midst, for those that we love who are single. Maybe they're not here today. I know a message like this hits in a bunch of different places and can sometimes sting or hurt. But I just pray for all of those who are in search of companionship, that not only would they find someone who adds life to theirs, but that they themselves, as the search continues, they would set as their first priority personal growth, personal maturity, growing in knowledge and love of you. Help us to be a community that sees one another, no matter what our marital status is or relationship status, sees one another as whole human beings who bring sacred worth to your body. We thank you. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.